You'll never make it without me. Those words, they didn't just hit me. They sank into me, like cold steel slipping between my ribs. Melissa didn't raise her voice. She didn't scream or cry. She just said it, calm and sharp, like a surgeon delivering bad news without emotion. Her eyes didn't even flicker. No pity. No second thoughts, just finality. I stood there in the doorway of our apartment. My apartment now, I guess, holding the last box of her things. My fingers were numb from the weight of it, but not because it was heavy. It was the weight of what she had just said that froze me in place. I forced a smile, not because I felt okay, but because I refused to let her see me break. I understand, I whispered. That's all I said. No begging. No, please stay. No dramatic fight. Just those 2 words. She blinked. That was the only sign she was surprised. A half-beat pause. Then she turned, heels clicking against the wooden floor, and walked out without looking back. The door closed gently behind her, but in my head, it sounded like a gavel slamming down in a courtroom. Final. Irrevocable. I don't even remember setting the box down. I just remember staring at the space where she had been, like a part of me was still waiting for her to turn around and say she didn't mean it, that she was bluffing, that this was just another one of our cruel games. But she didn't. And I hated myself for still hoping. My knees buckled a little as I leaned against the wall. I slid down slowly, the cold plaster pressing into my back. I was alone. Not just in the room, in my life. She'd been my partner for 8 years. We built everything together. Or, at least I thought we did. I looked around the apartment, the muted gray couch we picked out together, the coffee table she insisted was too big, but eventually loved. The half-empty bookshelf. My books still there, hers gone. It all looked the same, but it felt hollow, like someone had sucked the air and the soul out of the space. My phone buzzed in my hand, a friend texting me to keep my head up. I stared at the screen, my thumb hovering but not replying. My hands trembled. Not violently, just that subtle, shaky kind of tremble you get when you're trying so hard to hold it together, but everything inside is unraveling. And then her words replayed again. You'll never make it without me. God, they stung. Not because I believed her, but because a small part of me was afraid she might be right. What if she was the best thing that ever happened to me? What if I'd already peaked and didn't even know it? I thought about all the nights I stayed late at work so we could afford the life she wanted. All the vacations we postponed. The dreams I shelved because she needed me to be stable. I'd given her so much of myself, and now I felt like I had nothing left. But under all that pain, under the hurt and humiliation, something small and stubborn was flickering. A spark. It wasn't anger. Not yet. It was something quieter, defiant. Like a voice whispering from the back of my mind, what if you could prove her wrong? I didn't know it then, but that was the moment everything started to shift. It didn't feel empowering or brave at the time. It felt like standing in a wreckage, unsure if I had the strength to even get up. But I did, eventually. And the crazy thing, that whisper, it wouldn't go away. I wiped my eyes, stood up, and for the first time in a long time, I didn't feel like a man who had just lost everything. I felt like a man who had just been set free. Before everything fell apart, my life wasn't exciting, but it was familiar, safe, predictable. I woke up every morning at 6:30 sharp, even on weekends. Shower, coffee, 10-minute walk to the bus stop. 45 minutes of podcast-filled silence before I stepped into the beige, fluorescent-lit world of my IT office. I was a system analyst, good at what I did, though most days it felt like I was just floating from one ticket to the next, solving problems that didn't matter. Melissa used to tease me about my routine. "You live like an old man," she'd laugh, tousling my hair as I sipped my morning coffee. I'd smile, pretending not to feel the sting behind her joke. Because deep down, I knew she wanted more. More adventure, more risk, more life. And me? I was just trying to give her stability. We met in college. She was this confident, magnetic business major with plans to own the world. I was the quiet tech guy who always sat in the back of the room. I still don't know what made her notice me, but when she did, she lit up my world. I remember thinking, this is it. This is what love is supposed to feel like. At first, it was electric. We couldn't get enough of each other. We dreamed together, talked about traveling to Japan, starting a business, maybe even building a smart home from scratch. But somewhere between graduation and real life, something shifted. The dreams shrank. We got married at 26, bought a modest condo just outside the city. I took the safer job. She started working at a startup, climbing the ladder faster than I could keep up with. The girl who once told me I was the calm to her storm slowly started to resent that calm. It didn't happen overnight. It crept in. First, it was the sighs when I turned down weekend plans to catch up on work. Then the silence when I showed her my latest app idea and she just said, Eventually, she stopped asking me about anything I cared about, but I held on. Because that's what love is, right? You stay. You fight for what you've built. You weather the seasons. At least, that's what I believed. There was one night, maybe a year before the end, that sticks in my memory like a splinter. We were sitting on the couch, watching some Netflix show I can't even remember. She was scrolling through her phone. I looked at her, really looked at her, and asked, "Are you happy?" She didn't answer for a long time, just stared at the screen. Then she said, without looking up, "I don't know." That should have been a warning sign, but I brushed it off. Told myself she was just tired, that we were in a rough patch, that we'd bounce back. But we didn't. She started working longer hours, going out with coworkers more often, coming home later. And when she was home, it felt like she wasn't really there, like I was living with a ghost of the woman I married. I tried. God, I tried. I planned weekend getaways, tried cooking new recipes, badly, but with effort. Left little notes in her purse before she went to work. I was holding on to something she had already let go of. And I felt it. The distance. The disapproval. The disappointment in her eyes every time I talked about staying with my job a little longer to build savings instead of taking a risk. I began to shrink in her presence, like every word out of my mouth needed approval to be valid. Still, I never thought she'd actually leave. Not until the day she did. Not until that moment when she looked me in the eye and said the words I'll never forget. "You'll never make it without me." That's when I realized something important. Our marriage didn't fail in a moment. It died quietly, over time, in all the little silences between us. It all came to a head one Thursday night. The apartment was unusually quiet, but not the peaceful kind. More like that stillness before a storm. You can feel the pressure, the unease. Melissa was sitting at the dining table, typing furiously on her laptop. Her face was blank, eyes locked on the screen, but the tension in her jaw told me everything I needed to know. I stood in the kitchen, stirring the pasta I'd made, her favorite, or at least it used to be. "Dinner's ready," I said gently. She didn't respond. I waited. A few seconds passed, then she finally closed the laptop, stood up, and walked past me to the sink. Didn't touch the food, didn't look at me. "Melissa," I said, my voice quieter now. "Can we talk?" She turned slowly, arms crossed, Her eyes were tired but sharp. Cold, the kind of look that cuts deeper than shouting ever could. "Talk about what, Daniel?" I hesitated. "About us. About what's happening to us." She scoffed and looked away. "There's nothing happening. That's the problem." Her words hit me in the chest. I stepped closer, desperate now. "Then tell me what you want. Tell me how to fix this. I know I've been playing it safe, but I did it for us, for our future." She didn't flinch. "Our future?" She laughed bitterly. "Daniel, I don't even recognize my life anymore. I feel like I'm suffocating in this routine you've wrapped around us." "I thought you wanted stability," I said, a little too defensively. "You used to say that—" "I was 24, she snapped. "I didn't know what I wanted, and now I do. I want more. I want passion, drive. I want someone who doesn't hide behind a keyboard all day and call it ambition." My hands clenched into fists at my sides, not out of anger, out of sheer helplessness. "So that's it? I'm not good enough because I'm not flashy? Because I didn't gamble our savings on some startup fantasy?" She didn't answer right away, just stared at me, lips pressed tight. Then she said the words that fractured me. "You'll never make it without me." Silence. The kind of silence that presses against your ears, fills your lungs, makes the air too thick to breathe. I couldn't speak, couldn't move, just stood there, stunned, blinking like I'd been slapped. I felt my throat tighten, my stomach twist into a knot. Was this how she saw me? As some dependent, fragile man she had to drag through life? I tried to speak, really, I did. But all I could manage was a whisper. "I understand." Not because I did, but because it was all I had left. She looked at me like I was a stranger, like the man standing in front of her was already someone from her past. Then she picked up her laptop and walked to the bedroom. I didn't follow. That night, I lay on the couch, wide awake, staring at the ceiling. My heart pounded against my ribs. I kept replaying the conversation in my head, her words echoing like bullets in a steel room. Every syllable chipped away at the foundation of who I thought I was. Was I really nothing without her? The next morning she left early, didn't say goodbye. A week later she moved out. No big fight, no dramatic scene, just quiet boxes, a moving truck, and a door that clicked shut like the final note of a sad song. And just like that, she was gone. But the real pain didn't come from losing her. It came from realizing how much of myself I'd lost along the way. After she left, the apartment felt abandoned, not just of her, but of meaning. Her perfume no longer lingered in the hallway. The plants she used to water were wilting. Even the air seemed stale, like it had forgotten how to move without her. For the first few days, I did nothing. I mean literally nothing. I'd wake up, stare at the ceiling, skip breakfast, maybe scroll through my phone for hours without really reading anything. The TV was on most of the time, but I couldn't tell you what played. The world kept spinning, but I was standing still, trapped in the wreckage of what had been my life. Then one night, about a week after she left, I caught a glimpse of myself in the bathroom mirror. I didn't recognize the man staring back at me. Unshaven, eyes red, shoulders slumped. I looked hollow, and that terrified me more than the breakup. That's when it hit me. Melissa didn't just leave me. I had left myself a long time ago. Somewhere along the way, I stopped dreaming, stopped striving, stopped being a man I could be proud of. I was playing it safe, surviving, not living. And if I kept going down that path, maybe she was right. Maybe I wouldn't make it. But what if she was wrong? What if this wasn't the end, but the start of something better? That night, I grabbed a notebook and wrote down one sentence. Prove her wrong by proving yourself right. It wasn't about revenge. It wasn't even about her. It was about me. Reclaiming the version of myself I'd buried beneath compromise and fear. The next morning, I woke up at 5 a.m. No alarms, no snoozes. I laced up the dusty running shoes I'd barely touched since college and went for a jog. I didn't make it far, barely a mile, but my lungs burned in the best way. It felt like I was waking up from a long sleep. I started eating cleaner, cutting out the comfort food I'd been using to numb the pain. I cleaned the apartment top to bottom, donated everything that reminded me of Melissa. It wasn't out of spite, it was about making space for me. I read every book on business, self-discipline, and mindset I could get my hands on. I watched free lectures on YouTube late into the night. I opened an online freelance profile, offering tech support and web design. The first few gigs were small, 100 here, 50 there. But they gave me something Melissa never did, a sense of personal achievement. Then came the breakthrough. I landed a freelance contract with a mid-sized company needing back-end support. It paid $8,000 over 2 months. When the contract was signed, I sat back in my chair, staring at the number on the screen. I actually laughed. Not out of arrogance, but disbelief. I did this. Me. For the first time in years, I didn't feel like a side character in someone else's story. And then, one afternoon at a co-working space, I met Chloe. She was sketching logos on her tablet, earbuds in, completely focused. We made eye contact across the room, and she gave me the smallest smile. Warm. Genuine. Later, we struck up a conversation over coffee. She asked me what I did. I told her I was building something of my own, and I meant it. We started seeing each other, slowly, carefully. She had this way of listening that made me feel seen, not judged. No passive-aggressive remarks, no silent disappointment, just encouragement. One night, as we sat on my balcony watching the city lights flicker below us, she said, "You know, there's something strong in your quiet. Most people don't carry that." And that's when I knew. I was finally becoming the man I was always meant to be. It was a bright, blue sky morning in Santorini. Those picture-perfect white buildings stacked on cliffs, sunlight dancing across the ocean like it was made of glass. Chloe and I had just finished breakfast at a tiny outdoor cafe overlooking the caldera. She was laughing about something I said, brushing croissant crumbs off her dress, and for a moment I just sat there, taking it in. I wasn't thinking about work, I wasn't stressing about money, I wasn't second-guessing myself. I was happy. Truly, peacefully happy. The kind of happiness that doesn't need to be loud, it just is. As we walked along a narrow path with sea views on one side and bright flowers spilling out of balconies on the other, Chloe suddenly stopped. She turned to me, grinning, and said, "You know what would be really petty and fun?" I raised an eyebrow. "I'm listening." She held up her phone. "Let's take a photo. You, me, this view. Just casually. Send it to your ex." I laughed. "Seriously?" She shrugged playfully. "You don't have to say anything. Just let her see what you've become." At first, I hesitated. Not because I was afraid, but because I genuinely stopped thinking about Melissa. She didn't live in my mind the way she used to. But then I thought, maybe this wasn't about her. Maybe it was about honoring the road I walked to get here. A road paved with pain, doubt, loneliness, and growth. So we took the photo. Her arms around me, that perfect blue sea behind us, and the biggest, most unbothered smile on my face. I opened my messages, scrolled down to her name, Melissa Harper, and paused. My thumb hovered above the screen. My heart thudded once, hard. I attached the photo, typed 2 words. I made it, and hit send. No anger, no explanation, no need to prove anything. Just truth. A minute passed, then 2. I watched the little delivered notification pop up. A moment later, read. 3 dots appeared. Typing, then stopped. And nothing. Not a word, not a question, not a sarcastic response. Just silence. But this time, I didn't need her to say anything. Her silence said it all. It wasn't about gloating. It wasn't even about proving her wrong anymore. It was about showing myself that I had done what I once feared was impossible. I had rebuilt myself from nothing. I didn't just survive the heartbreak. I evolved because of it. That evening, Chloe and I drank wine on the terrace, watching the sun melt into the horizon like a golden memory. I told her more about my past, things I hadn't said out loud in a long time. She listened, not to judge or fix anything, but just to understand. She looked at me and said, "You know, I don't know who she thought you were, but I know who you are now." And I believed her. That night, for the first time since Melissa walked out the door, I felt something deep in my chest uncoil, like I'd been holding my breath for years and didn't realize it until now. And finally, I exhaled. I was no longer the man left behind. No longer the quiet, unsure version of myself she walked away from. I was someone new. Not because of her, because of me. When I got back from Santorini, everything felt different. Not because the city had changed, but because I had. The apartment didn't feel empty anymore. It felt intentional, my space, my life. The old echoes were gone. No more shadows of Melissa haunting the corners. No more second-guessing myself every time I looked in the mirror. I had built something, a life that felt real, a business that was growing, a relationship that made me feel chosen, not tolerated. But most of all, I had built me.